What up? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And look at you. You done stumbled upon little OTB Saints, where we bring you all the latest black and gold coverage.
Who are the Saints going to draft? Who's going to be their quarterback? What does the salary cap look like? All that information and more.
Hope you enjoy it. Like, subscribe. Let's talk Saints, and we get to some general draft thoughts from last night, Ross. But first, I want to highlight Saints. You talk about the Saints every single day in depth. I can't fathom how much you've talked about Brian Brzee up to this point already. What more? Give us the summary of all the conversations you've had over the past month. Why should Saints fans be so excited? Brzee, was this the right pick?
Yeah, I've had at least one Brian Brzee segment in every week of the show for the last 2 months, and part of that is just because it seemed very likely that Brian Brzee was going to be on the Saints' radar, if nothing else. And I'll tell you, like, some of the things that you can quickly highlight about him. Obviously, a lot of his story is going to center around his adversity or the adversity that he's faced, and his ability to be able to come out on the other side of it. I don't want to reprise trauma and things like that like over and over again on the airwaves for the guy. But I will say that speaking to him last night after the draft, you could just see somebody that came out on the other side of things that would challenge any human being as a not so hardened but very matured man. And wow. I think that that's one of the things that the New Orleans Saints absolutely love about Brian Brzee. He's an attacking 3-tech style interior defensive lineman with experience who has played up and down the defensive line in heavy rotations, in 3-man fronts, odd man fronts, 3-man fronts, 4-man fronts, bear fronts, Okie fronts. He's done it all. But one of the things that is kind of a main cornerstone criterion for the New Orleans Saints is makeup. And this guy is made of the best. And so it was a very exciting to get to see him and speak with him last night in a night that was so very exciting for him. But it's clear to see where he'll translate on the field as well.
So now, Ross, we kind of talked about it with Jake, but I mean, you could go a lot of different ways here for it. We know the Saints, if they have a guy that they are going to trade up, Mickey Loomis, whatever, we all know that. Michael Mayer is still out there. Now, am I guilty of just falling into the old easy, offensive piece, let's go? Like, would you trade up to get Michael Mayer here early in this second?
Yeah, it's interesting. Dennis Allen said that when the Cincinnati Bengals went up on the clock last night, that there were still 2 guys that were there that they felt like, okay, no matter what, we're going to get one of the guys. And Brian Brzee was one of those guys. And so they were able to go with him at 29. But there is a chance that Myles Murphy, who was taken at 28 by the Cincinnati Bengals, was the other guy. But there's also a chance that he wasn't. And there's a good chance that Felix Anudike-Uzomah, as well as Nolan Smith, the 2 edge rushers that were taken after Brian Brzee, weren't those guys either, considering they don't really check the boxes in terms of the prototype. They're undersized edge rushers at the next level, at the Saints' next level in terms of their system. And so if a guy like Michael Mayer was the other target that could have potentially fallen, well, he's still on the board going into this second round. And I think that adding an offensive weapon next is something that would benefit the New Orleans Saints. I think going to their offensive line would benefit them as well. A guy like Osiris Torrance out of Florida, or, of course, formerly of the Raging Cajuns, who hasn't allowed a sack in his entire career. Steve Avila out of TCU is another kind of road grader offensive lineman that they could go with. So they have the ability to continue to address their trenches, but I wouldn't rule out the opportunity and the idea here for an offensive weapon. And I look at guys like Michael Mayer, of course, Darnell Washington, the big tight end / almost offensive lineman, that guy out of Georgia. And then also another guy that I'll point out would be Cedric Tillman, the wide receiver out of Tennessee, or Jalen Hyatt, the wide receiver out of Tennessee, for that matter, because of the connection to Cody Burns, the New Orleans Saints wide receiver coach, formerly with the Tennessee Volunteers.
We're talking to Ross Jackson at Ross Jackson Noel on Twitter, host of the Locked On Saints podcast. Ross, I asked Jake the same question hour 1. The Carolina Panthers get Bryce Young, number 1 overall. No surprise there. It kind of became clear the past week. How worried should New Orleans Saints fans be about the Panthers going forward?
Yeah, I think you're at least a little worried about the fact that there's another mobile quarterback in the division, and we know that hasn't necessarily been the Saints defense's strength, although it hasn't been as big of a weakness in the recent years as we look back to, let's say, the RG3 days and things like that, right? You're so far away, so long ago. And so I think that, you look at the mobile quarterback side of it, you look at the dual quarterback side, the dual threat side of it all. He's also highly accurate. He's incredibly athletic. I mean, he's a smart processor, quick processor. He's a very good quarterback. So I think in any case, you're a little bit worried about that. How well does he translate to the NFL game? How well can the Carolina Panthers build around him, who have gotten at least off to a very good start in terms of their coaching situation? Like Bryce Young enters one of the best quarterback coaching systems out there in the NFL. And so I think that that's something maybe to be concerned about. But look, the Saints have a lot of experience creating an offensive attack to support an undersized quarterback, just in terms of height when it came to Drew Brees. There was always that question about Drew Brees being, shorter than his offensive line, all those other things. So they're incredibly well positioned and versed in what it takes to disrupt the game of a smaller passer. And a 5'10" Bryce Young is a guy that you would be able to get after that. Now you add a 6'5" interior defensive lineman, and we know that the New Orleans Saints love their defensive linemen tall, 6'4" and above. That puts them in a pretty good position now, especially with the addition of Brian Brzee, who's a great interior pass rusher, can put pressure right in the face of Bryce Young off the line of scrimmage and right up the middle of the offensive line. So they should have the pieces that they need to be able to counteract sort of what Bryce Young is. But either way, I mean, he's an incredibly talented quarterback. And the big question is, how can Carolina build around him as they move forward?
Yeah, I hadn't even considered that. I kind of love that, though, in a lot of ways. It is some sort of slight counterpunch to Bryce Young. Brzee represents specifically. Ross, have you ever played Settlers of Catan, the board game?
Yes, a long time ago, and for a long time, because that's what. Yeah,
the point is, I'm sorry, I've stepped all over that. I screwed you. But look, it's awesome. It's so much fun, but it causes massive arguments, right, amongst the friends, and mainly the arguments are based off of what people call king-making, where you make a bad trade and you set somebody else up to win the game. Well, the king-making legacy of the New Orleans Saints continued last night as the Philadelphia Eagles got Jalen Carter at 9. Ross, how's anybody supposed to compete with this Eagles team? Like, is there anyone that could challenge him this year?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're loading up quite a bit, and then they turn around and they go and get his teammate at 30 as well, because they're coming off of a Super Bowl appearance, and Nolan Smith, who's a perfect fit for that sort of undersized but speedy pass rushing defense of the Philadelphia Eagles that had over 70 sacks last year. And yeah, they lost some of those defensive pieces like Javon Hargrave, who's now a San Francisco 49er, but goodness, you replace him with a Jalen Carter, you put him next to, a Jordan Davis, you add, this sort of Philadelphia Bulldogs defense that they're building over there. And it's ridiculous. It's incredible. We'll look and see if maybe Kelly Ringo is the next, pick for the Philadelphia Eagles. But man, I do think, with Jalen Hurts on, those two wide receivers that they have over there, and AJ Brown, who's already got his bag, and Devontae Smith, who should be next. You look for them to continue to add in their running back room. Their defense is stout. Their offensive line is stout. They're the team to beat in the NFC again this year, and they've just continued to add to it. Unfortunately, the New Orleans Saints did play an unfortunate role in it with that top 10 pick trade.
Ross, how about this? I know that you obviously host Locked On Saints, but I know you do a ton of Locked On work behind the scenes. How insane is it right now? What do y'all have going down on the network?
Oh, it was insane, but so much fun last night. We have our college shows that are producing quick interviews for every selection to give sort of a little bit of personal insight on all of these players and who they are coming out of the collegiate ranks. We have a live show hosted by Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino, the draft dudes, that covers all throughout every pick. We're bringing in NFL hosts and doing interviews with them after each selection to talk about the fit and how that player contributes and makes that NFL team better, and more and more and more and more. So there's a ton going on here over at Locked On, and thankfully I get to stick my fat little sausage fingers in all of it, and be able to play a role in watching a lot of people live out their dreams while a lot of people live out their dreams being selected in the NFL draft. So it's a cool thing to be a part of.
What's the best way? Because I like when I listen to Locked On, I have the individual podcast feeds. What's the best way to kind of find out? What's a good landing spot to find it all? If I want to see these interviews with the different players and everything, what's the best way to find it?
Yeah, if you head over to Locked On NFL Draft, that
Okay.
YouTube page actually has a playlist now with all of the different, NFL interviews, all the collegiate interviews, things like that. That's going to be the easiest place to kind of catch all of the videos. If you want to see all of the different podcasts and things like that are available, you can go to lockedonpodcasts.com. Just make sure it's plural. It's lockedonpodcasts.com.
Ah, yes, the devil's in the details. Ross Jackson at Ross Jackson Nola, host of Locked On Saints podcast. Last one, then I'm letting you out of here.
You're good, bud.
What was your biggest surprise, piece of interest, storyline from last night?
I think it's the group of outliers. We knew that this was going to be a draft of outliers here. You lead off the draft with Bryce Young, a 5'10" quarterback. Will McDonald goes early to, if I remember correctly, the New York Jets. You have Lucas Van Ness, a guy that never saw any starts in his collegiate career, drafted top 15 after the Aaron Rodgers trade that boosted the Green Bay Packers from 15 to 13. You have 160, 170-pound cornerback going in the first round and Emmanuel Forbes. You have these edge rushers like Nolan Smith and Felix Anudike-Uzomah going early. We always see sort of that edge rusher run at the end of the first round, don't we? But that's such a big part of what sort of the storyline of this draft was going in. And it's even, the outliers on the athletically unique side, like Anthony Richardson going top 5 and all that. Even though that wasn't a surprise, I think Anthony Richardson is the quarterback everybody should be willing to bet on, because if you get him right, that's huge for you. Just a historically impressive player. And so I think it's really the outliers that, thrived in the first round in a league that so often we predict more and more and more is becoming less and less risky in the NFL draft. Don't take running backs in the first round. You don't take off-ball linebackers in the first round. Jack Campbell went in the first round. You don't take tight ends in the first round. There goes Dalton Kincaid to the Buffalo Bills. I think that, while we sit back sometimes from the outside and try to say, okay, there's this prototype, these players are outliers, they may not be quality first rounders because of that. The NFL is saying not so fast, because where these kids start is not where they finish in terms of their NFL career, and they're willing to invest in that.
That is some fantastic perspective there from our guy Ross. Go listen to Locked On Saints podcast. Follow him at Ross Jackson Nola. Ross, keep up the grind, man. Thank you for carving out some time for us this morning. And enjoy the rest of the draft, man. Wow, just amazing black and gold takes right there, Jake.
I don't think I've ever heard any takes that are better than the two guys that just gave you that take.
And you can keep getting them by going ahead and liking, subscribing, ringing the bell to get notifications when we post. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next OTB Saints.